For this assignment, you'll be using paint to complete the worksheet and will need the following materials: your primary and secondary colors, mixing palette or disposable plate, cup of water and paper towels, and a paintbrush. Before painting, fill in the answers for questions 1 through 12. Before we can start painting this worksheet, let's fill in the blanks. So if you look at the black triangle, it says primary colors. And the first one for number 1 is already listed as red. We know our primaries are red, yellow, and blue. So 5 is on the corner of the primary, so that must be yellow. I'm going to put a Y in parentheses for yellow. And then I'm going to turn my color wheel. And number 9 is pointing on the other corner of the primary color, so that must be blue. I'm going to put a capital B and a lowercase l for blue. All right. Now, if you look, the white triangle is our secondary, so it has the black of the tips. So our first secondary, and if you need help, look over here at your colors: orange, green, and violet. So our first one, number 3, should be orange. Put an O in parentheses. Number 7's already been filled in for green. So our last one must be violet. So number 11 is violet. All right, so we have our primaries and our secondaries listed. Let's go back now and just fill in our tertiaries. If you remember through the introduction, red and orange, when they meet together, are going to create the tertiary red-orange. Remember, your primary name always goes first. So red-orange. R-O. Number 4, number 3, and number 5. Number 3 is orange. Number 5 is yellow. That way they make yellow-orange. Put Y-O in parentheses. Moving right along. Number 5 is yellow. Number 7 is green. So therefore, when they meet together in the middle, it should be yellow-green. YG. Number 8. If you look at number 7, it's green. Number 9 is blue. Number 8 should be blue-green. Fairly easy stuff to do. Number 10. All right, so number 9 is blue. Number 10 is violet. Therefore, when they meet in the middle, number 10 should be blue-violet. BV in parentheses. And our last one. Number 1 is red. Number 11 is violet. Therefore, when they meet together, red-violet. RV. All right. So we have gotten everything labeled. Now it's time to start painting our color wheel. I like to start with the primaries, then I move on to my secondaries, and lastly I fill in my tertiaries. So I'm going to open up my paints here. This takes me a minute with these primaries, they're rough. Okay. So you don't need to use the mixing plate or the mixing palette right now. We're just going to use straight out of the containers. Starting off with my red. This one right here is my red. I always look to see what it says before I start painting. Okay, so always pause before you start painting. It happens every time that somebody accidentally colors the wrong spot or starts to paint the wrong spot. If that happens, let it dry. Let it fully dry, and then you can paint over top of it. I'll be able to tell, if that kind of thing happened to you. So in this space, paint in the color red. Once you've got that filled in, make sure you thoroughly rinse that brush. I know I'm always saying this, but it's smart to do it, good to do it, to keep your stuff clean. Take the time to do it right. All right. Especially now because we're getting ready to move on to yellow, and that one gets contaminated easily. All right. So number 5 is going to be our yellow. Sometimes I'll just put my finger where it's going to be. That way I know I don't paint in the wrong spot. So you'll fill this space in with the yellow. Rinse that brush thoroughly. And because we're going to be doing a lot of different colors and switching up colors, you'll probably need to pause somewhere. I'll be doing the same thing, and rinse out your water. It'll start to get really murky and gross. All right, and our last primary color is going to be blue. So that right here is number 9. Keep my finger on it so I don't paint the wrong spot. You'll notice, a little bit of paint goes a long way with this. Don't overload it. This paper is not necessarily meant to be painted, so when you overload, it just gets all yucky and wobbly. And these would have traditionally gone in our notebooks. However, we're not doing that. I always get wobbly worksheets from students overloading the paper. All right, rinse that brush, rotate this back around. I'm going to set my primaries aside so I don't accidentally get into the wrong container. Rinse off my brush, and I'm ready to start with the new little wells of color. So I'm going to use my secondaries, open them all up. I'll tell you what, these are kind of, they're tough. All right. All right, and we're going to start with the first secondary, which is orange, number 3. This blue is really in my brush. Okay. Get a little bit of paint on there. Number 3. Remember, always touch. Make sure I'm in the right spot. Fill this space in. And there we go. Rinse that brush. Our next secondary is green, number 7. My water's starting to get brown. I'll probably make it through the secondaries and then I'll go rinse my brush. So green, I rotate the paper. It just makes it easier for me. Think smarter, not harder. All right, number 7 is green. All right. And our last secondary is going to be violet, and that's number 11. Spin my paper around. Rinse off my brush. Okay. Now is the time to work on our tertiaries. So I took the time to go and rinse out, get my water clean before I started creating my tertiary colors. And if you've watched previous videos, you know that I like to mix my colors, or at least lay them out in the palette before I mix them, and it just makes it a lot easier for me. So I like to start with my red orange, my yellow orange, my yellow green, blue violet, red violet. So I work from the top left all the way down to the bottom right. So start with my red, place that in this little dish. And we won't need as much as we did for the other worksheet. There's going to be my red violet down here, so I'm placing my red down in there. And I rinse this out. And I move on, thoroughly rinse it. And I always place out my primaries first, just the way I do things. All right, so then we'll need the yellow. So that would be for yellow orange and yellow green. Remember, yellow is our more, you'll need more of it compared to the other ones. Its tonal dominance is low. Honestly, with paint, when we're talking about subtractive color, so our color, honestly, the only other one that it kind of outdoes is white. Everything else is above yellow. It's much darker. Okay, so now we're going to do our blue, and we'll have blue for our blue-green and our blue-violet. Place those in their little pots. Rinse this thoroughly, and then we'll move on to adding in our secondaries. You noticed there are 2 primaries, and they'll be to be mixed, and there are 2 secondaries to be mixed. All right, moving on to orange. So we have red orange and yellow orange. Rinse out our brush. We'll move on to green, and we'll have yellow green and blue green. And our last color to add to the tray is violet. We'll have blue violet and red violet. Okay. So I've got all of those placed out. Now it is time to start mixing and adding them into their correct space on our color wheel. So thoroughly rinsing that brush, getting off any extra paint that I can, and we're going to start off with our red orange, which would be number 2. So mix these together. And I notice I don't use that whole pan. I don't need to do that. Instead, if you just do that, you're spreading it around. You're really wasting your time, wasting paint. So I just try to keep it towards the top. That's a good, nice red orange. Fill in that space. You really don't need a lot of paint. Again, if you've watched some of my other videos, I always under mix and I always have to add more to it, but this is a much smaller space. So I should be okay this time. I think I've finally figured it out. Okay. So our number 2's been done with our red orange. Rinse that brush, and I'll tell you my water is already filthy. Filthy, filthy, filthy. Get these out of my way. Brush is just disgusting. Okay. So, yellow, orange. Much more yellow than orange. All right. I like to rotate that wheel so that it's facing my dominant hand. So I'm left-handed, so everything's facing my left. You know, again, move that paper around to best suit you. You don't have to, you know, work around that color wheel. Make it work around you. Okay. Yellow, green. Very little green to the yellow. You can always bring in more. All right. See, my water is just filthy. You can hear the neighbors next door, the kids outside playing. They're being quite loud. Okay. Our next one is blue-green. They've actually started to come together. I love these cool tones. All right, place this on here. Number 10, Blue Violet. And our final space on our color wheel will be number 12, Red Violet. And there you have it, a completed color wheel.